But every week we've kind of been picking a muscle to focus on. And this week I picked a muscle called the sartorius. It's a hip flexor. And the reason I picked it is because I think it's really weird. I think it's just a kind of a weird muscle, and it's almost funny to me. So I'm gonna share my screen. What am I doing here? Beep, beep. All right, can we all see that? Great. So here is the sartorius muscle. So if we kind of want to look to the most far right picture with the muscles, this goes in the front of your thigh. So it starts at this really bony part of your hip. If you grab your hip, like the top of that really, really bony part, that's what it attaches to. And then it kind of does this like a diagonal silk like wrap around the front of the quadricep. And it goes and attaches into the inside of the knee. So your medial knee, but it's going to attach right here on the inside. So it kind of does this, like crazy wrap around the leg from the top of I'll stop my share really fast and go to me. So from the top of the hip, kind of goes down into the medial thigh. So shunk. And it's just kind of weird because most muscles are pretty like, straight up and down, but this one just does this cool turn. So what we kind of want to first note with that is it passes over two joints, right? So, what's going on? Am I not sharing my screen right now? Oh, sorry. Right, so it passes over two joints, the hip joint and the knee joint. And then in the second picture, you want to observe that's its action. So that's the leg going into lateral rotation or butterfly pose. So that movement of kind of outwardly rotating the hip and bending the knee at the same time, that's its action. So really, this muscle helps us to sit in our lotus meditation pose. This is the muscle that does that. Or when you just like cross your legs when you're seated down, this is the muscle that does that action. It is the longest muscle in the body, but it's only roughly about 2 finger widths long. So it's just it's an interesting one. In today's class, the poses that are going to stretch the sartorius are a dragon pose, because we'll be going into hip extension. So you could probably see now if the knee went back into like a lunge, it would be stretched. The other one is deer, because it'll do the medial rotation with the flexed knee. The poses that use sartorius, so the poses that engage it, not stretch it, engage the muscle, is butterfly and half pigeon. That's when we'll be engaging sartorius, but mostly we'll be stretching them in dragon and deer. And it's also, at the same time, it's a hip flexor. So when everyone says I have tight hip flexors, if someone says I have tight hip flexors, we kind of immediately go to quads, and it probably is quads, but sartorius is also there, and it's also a hip flexor, and really actually is a wonderful stabilizer for the front of the pelvis, and also a wonderful stabilizer for our knees. So it kind of plays into our hips and our knees in its own small little way. So that's just a fun one. And then got a lot of good poses. So I'll pass it off to Greta, and I'll be back in later.
Cool. Thank you, Veronica. That was thorough and succinct, and I feel so informed. And before we get into the rest of class, let's practice 3 ohms. And I chant Om to connect us through resonance and sound and vibration And no, we're not sharing the same space, but we are sharing time and space together virtually. So getting yourself situated, finding a seat. And then when you find that seat, feeling the contact between your ankles and the floor, your glutes and the floor, and feeling anchored and connected to that base. And then from there, feeling the levity and the uplift of the chest and the spine, relaxing your shoulders down. And we'll do one clearing breath and then 3 rounds of Om. Inhale in through the nose. And exhale HA out of your mouth. Release. And this time, prepare for Om. Inhale. Inhale, breathe in. Exhale, release the breath out. Apollo definitely was joining in on that one. There's something about the Om that really sets him off. But let's start our Yin practice on our backs. So coming to the back, coming into Supta Baddha Konasana, bringing the soles of the feet to touch, and really leaving some distance in between your heels and your pelvis. This is not a Yang style stretch, so definitely leaving some distance. You can even put support under your knees if you're feeling a lot in the adductors, if they're feeling really tight. And then coming to lay on the back and settling into the ground and settling into your practice. And just like with our seat at the beginning of class, feeling the outside edges of your feet touch the ground, the tail, the sacrum. Also taking in where the spine isn't touching the ground, kind of that negative space, the back. And arriving. And once you're here, I'm going to kind of just go over Yin in general. I am fairly certain that everyone here has practiced Yin Yoga before. But I do find that the ritual of talking about the energy and just everything that goes into the Yin Yoga practice to be kind of grounding. So Yin Yoga is the opposite of Yang, and neither of these energies are absolute. They're very much relative to each other, and it can change depending on how you're comparing things. But in the Yin Yoga practice, we tend to be gravitating towards more of a nurturing, a more generative, definitely more of a reflective practice. And there are 3 tattvas, 3 truths, 3 tenets that are associated with this practice, especially coming from the lineage of Bernie Clark. And the first is meeting a gentle edge. I've heard this, Alyssa calls this pertinent depth. And it really is just maybe like 40 to 70% of your range of motion. And we want to kind of pull the edge back a little bit, not full range of motion, because we want to be able to hold the pose for time sustainably. So arriving, and our poses tonight are mostly like around 5-ish minutes. So you get here and you're like, cool, could I be here for 5 minutes? And then if the answer is no, pulling the edge back or adding props, really utilizing what you have in your apartment or your space that you're in, be it pillows or books or towels, blankets, to either bring the floor up to you or create an extension of your limb. Not hesitating to get creative with the props. So finding the gentle edge is numero uno, and then being still is number 2. And There are two reasons which you'd move in this practice. The first is if you're invited to go deeper, and that may happen after 3 minutes. You might be like, oh, I don't need this pillow, and you throw it off to the side. And the other reason you would move is if you're experiencing pain, adjust, come out. Think about, if we talk about the intention of like getting into the lower back or something, how else you can access that or make it more suitable for you in your practice today. And that may change from class to class. And one thing about stillness is the stillness, we also are inviting in a sense of quiet. And I think when we invite in a sense of quiet into the practice, sometimes the quiet can be very comforting. And finally, you're given the space just to like relax and be at ease. But I also have found sometimes in the quiet, that is when the mind really is like, ooh, you're not doing something. You're not distracted by a screen right now. Like, let me dominate this and get really noisy. So if that does happen in your practice, be aware of it, knowing that it is so common, and trying to turn towards that with non-judgment and really zero in on that. You don't have to fix anything that's going on. Just practicing the awareness and knowing that it's going on is like very impressive. And then finally, the third thing is we hold for time. And I keep track of time on my phone, as does Veronica. We give halfway marks and final minutes, and we do this so you can more easily surrender into the pose. It's like, oh, okay, it's been halfway, we're at your final minute. I've also found over time that I'm better at just kind of feeling minutes since I've started teaching Yin, but that is mostly a side effect. Otherwise, when you do come up and out of the poses, move slowly. Slow is associated with Yin. Move intentionally. You don't have to rush out. There is no sense of urgency here. Take the time you need doing counter movements and tapping into what's going to feel intuitively right in your body. And I think I'll leave it at that for today. Veronica and I may add in some other little blips or clips throughout our practice, but I think that is more than enough information. Most of the poses we do will be practiced in quiet, and it's kind of nice because instead of doing like a 75-minute meditation, which would be like, I can't even wrap my head around that right now, you're kind of breaking them up into these little blips, and I think that's a wonderful way to practice meditation. And then slowly begin to navigate your way out of Supta Konasana, or the long-winged butterfly on the back. Close the knees like you would close a book. And maybe after that hold, you want to bring the knees in towards your chest, roll around the flat part of your back, just taking whatever counter movement the body is asking for. And however it seems fitting for you, you can either rock and roll up to a seat, or you can choose to kind of flip off towards one side and come into a tabletop position. And maybe you actually want to flow through a little flexion and extension of the spine. Veronica and I just got through the spine time series, so noticing the extension and the flexion when you really zero into like that cat sensation. And then coming back to a neutral table, we're going to make our way into cow face pose, Gomukhasana, and in Yin, we call it shoelace. So starting first, lift up the left leg, extend it behind you, and then with the left leg, bring it behind the right leg. And then you can take a peek back at your shins and create more distance, more width in between your shins. And then slowly walk your hands back towards your pelvis and come into shoelace. You can also come into it in other ways. Ultimately, we want to get the right leg up and over the left leg down here. And if you arrive here and you're like, ooh, that is too much on my bottom knee, that is also a common sensation. Extend the left leg out and you're going to get all the same benefits. Also option to put a pillow, or a block underneath there. I just whacked a pillow with a block when I did that. So getting yourself set up, removing the glutes out from underneath you. And then we're gonna take this in a fold with an arm variation. And you're welcome to do, we're actually gonna do cow face pose. And I would grab a scarf or a strap. So this is that moment, or a sock or tights. It can be a sweatshirt, you can really use anything. I like the scarf because it's kind of silky. And then put the scarf in your right hand, and you can put it up overhead like you are on a float in a parade. And then with the left arm, swoop that behind and grab the scarf. You can also grab your hands here, but remember, we want the muscles to be pretty relaxed. We don't want them to feel super active. So this might not be your full range of motion that you would do maybe more in a yang style class. And then slowly bring the chest down. And in a yin class, we're actually trying to access kind of more rounding and curvature in the spine. It does not have to be a very active, extended lengthening like we're often getting in a vinyasa setting. So really letting the spine round here. And when you get down there, you may want to grab some support for your forehead, or you may want to put a block or a pillow under your chest. And if at any point in the class, if this becomes too much in the arms, you can release this down. This is our ball and socket joint class, so we are trying to get into the hips and the shoulders at the same time, but there is other opportunity to get into the shoulders if you need that. And I've got the timer going here. And especially early on in class right now, just doing a little bit of a body scan, starting at the top of the head and relaxing your forehead. Maybe you're kind of squeezing your eyes, relaxing your eyelids, relaxing your cheeks, relaxing your jaw, moving the tongue from the roof of your mouth, and letting that relaxing sensation release the tension you might be holding in your neck. You may not even realize it's there. Relaxing your shoulders, chest, the ribs, the belly, your glutes, the thighs, calf muscles, and the feet. I notice really through this class, I'm like constantly flexing my feet. So just if you're looking, it's really easy to resume kind of that place of tension. So just giving that yourself a scan and trying to direct relaxation there and ease. And this, we just passed the halfway mark. And this is the final minute. You're going to check in. Maybe you need to let the arms down. And we're coming up on the last few moments here. So just begin to think about how you're going to move out of the pose. So when it comes time, it's more of a choice and less of an impulse. Release the arms. Press the hands into the ground. Lift the chest. Come back up to a tall spine. And from here, we're going to do that fun transition that everybody loves. Putting both hands on the left side of your hips. And then pressing the feet into the ground, keeping the knees bent and twisting yourself around. Do the loop. Whoop. Then coming to the other side. And you may get here and realize that this side is another whole experience. Like the knee may be like way up here on this side and the other side was much more relaxed. And we tend to have a dominant side, and oftentimes it's because we were compensating in different roles and aspects of our lives, and the body had to compensate in that way. So it's absolutely normal and natural for that to be a part of your practice. Getting yourself set up on this side, maybe extending the leg out or grabbing any support or structure that you need, pillows or blocks. And then we'll get into the arm variation. So this time putting the arm up with the left hand, scarf in the left hand, and letting that drop behind you with the right hand, swooping the arm behind, making connection, contact, choosing the width that you would like, and then slowly bringing the chest forward. You may have to break contact with the scarf to get yourself set up for the fold. That's okay. And I've got the timer going. And maybe repeating that body scan on this side. But instead of doing it on the front, doing it on the back side of your body. So feeling the sensation in the back of the head, the back of the neck, wherever your shoulder blades are. And seeing if anything changes. And this is the halfway mark. And this is the final minute. And we're coming up on the last few moments. Begin to discern how you would like to exit, and it doesn't have to be the way that I'm saying. You choose another option. Releasing the arm grip that you've chosen. Slowly and intentionally lifting the chest, moving any props out of the way that you need to move, unthreading your legs, and taking any organic movement. You didn't really take a whole lot of time for movement in between, so maybe windshield wipering the legs that your body is calling for. It's feeling quite good. My hips, you may also kind of have a inclination to come into this reverse farmer tabletop. Sometimes that can feel nice. Just really anything that's gonna release tension. I think that's just as much as part of the yin practice as holding the pose, as being in the release. And Veronica is going to take us through the next bit here.
Thanks, Greta. Okay, so now that we've moved around a little bit, the next pose we're going to get into is our dragon pose. So when doing dragon, it's a lot of pressure is on the knee that's on the ground because it is a lunge. Sorry, my camera ankle's all wacky doodle today. So it is like a lunge. So you really want to be conscious of this knee. I am feeling super knee sensitive today, so I'm going to put a whole pillow under it. And if you put it under the shin and support it with the shin as well, that's going to kind of lift the knee off the ground in a pretty comfortable way, and still give you that really good stretch here at the front. And then we'll start with our left foot forward. Right foot forward. My bad. You just want to kind of have your hips. I mean, this front knee doesn't necessarily need to be over the toe. Shouldn't be over the toes. It should be kind of in a nice line or a little bit behind. Also make sure it's not kind of going into the center too much, but it's keeping nice and straight here. So once you've kind of found your comfy spot where your knee is good, you can go as high or as low as you want in this. It is a big hip flexor stretch, and we don't want to pull anything too fast. We're not going to be here for long. I can kind of already feel this pose right now, so I'm going to move out of it myself a little. And with your head, you can either use your hands for support on the ground. I sometimes like to bring them in to the middle of my thigh, kind of almost like a lizard. And I just like to hang my head. Greta's doing, she's holding onto her couch or has her arms resting on her couch. Maybe that is what you would like. Maybe hands on blocks. And if there's pinching in the front of your right hip, kind of at the top of the hip crease, you can maybe take that right knee and just take it back a little bit. Kind of ease the bend in that knee just a little bit. And that might help take that pinch off the front. The main goal is that our left hip flexor right now is opening. Our halfway point. This is our final minute. Notice I was gripping my toes to my mat. So like Greta said earlier, maybe taking a body scan, see what's gripping. This pose is not the easiest of yin postures to hold. Once you sink into it, it gets pretty real pretty fast. So see if you're holding on to anything. And try to give it a few breaths. Right, over the next couple of breaths, slowly move out of it. Maybe slowly leaning back your butt to the left heel. Coming to sit, maybe doing a little bit more of a hamstring stretch for that front right leg. And taking the right leg back, coming to all fours, hands and knees. And then on to the next side. So taking the left foot forward now. And doing whatever padding you need to do on the right side. Moving the pillows over, maybe blocks for your hands. This side might feel totally different. I know mine's does. So, acknowledging that. Nothing is perfect side to side. I've started the timer. I sometimes like to envision my muscles, you know, what they're doing. And so we can think of the sartorius that we talked about earlier, how it started at the front of the hip bone. So you can almost like visualize and send your kind of image to your head of the top of your right hip bone, where you hug your hands to your hips. And then you can think of that sartorius muscle going from there, kind of wrapping around the front of your thigh. You can even look at your thigh from this position if you want to open your eyes. If not, keep them closed. but it kind of, does its little wrap into the inside of the knee, past the kneecap, on to the tibia of the shin. This big muscle right now that's stretching, pretty deeply in the right leg right now. Our sartorius is also crossing over that knee joint. So this stretch is really going to our knees as well. And that was our halfway point. Final minute. All right. Over the next couple of breaths, begin to release this pose. Moving slowly. We don't want to move our hips too fast. Maybe giving that left front leg a nice stretch on the hamstrings. Maybe flexing the foot towards your face. Maybe sitting all the way back onto your heel and straightening your spine. Head goes back after that long forward fold down. We're going to come back to our hands and knees, and let's just find hands and knees with a pretty neutral spine. And from here, we're going to go into our puppy dog pose, or melting heart. So slowly begin to take step by step your hands out in front, leaving your knees parallel or directly under the hips, and just walking the hands straight out and lowering the chest onto the ground. Now you can put something underneath your forehead if you like. That'll help support you. You can put something under your knees, like again, a pillow or a blanket or a rolled up yoga mat under your knees if this is a lot on the knees. Really getting into the side body underneath the shoulder blade. Opening up the rib cage so you can take those deep, big belly breaths. We're coming up to our halfway point of this posture. Maybe sink a little further. I love the feeling of my shoulders in this posture. Feels like they're just getting all that, fresh circulation. I've been studying a lot of acupressure lately, and there's an acupressure point right on the top of the shoulder. They refer to it as the well of the shoulder. And the well is usually the first thing built in a settlement. It's where everyone congregates to get water. It's the source of, life to a village and to a community that's trying to grow. And a well is, a very giving place, and it holds things for us as a container. And so all the stress we kind of hold in our shoulders, you kind of release it now and just kind of maybe envision a more shallow well right at the top of the shoulder blades. Right now, most of the muscles in that area are pretty relaxed. We're more so getting a stretch on our side. So that area and that well can just be a container for the muscles that live there. And moving with ease, begin to walk your hands back up to a nice neutral tabletop, but do it over a few breaths, Take your time. Maybe when you reach the top, you want to do a nice big cat curl, the opposite of the puppy, the big cat curl of the spine, and one big inhale for the cow, and then another one back for the cat. And whatever organic movement feels good. Go ahead and swing your hips off to the right or the left, and just come into a seat. Swing your hips out, knees out, and come into a seat. And grab a block. If you want to, we're going to go into fish. So grab a block. Maybe you want to grab a pillow too. Maybe you want to grab a blanket. This is a little bit of a longer hold. So for fish, we're gonna take our block or books or whatever we have, and we're gonna place it right at the part of the mat where our shoulder blades would go. So I want to envision it kind of like upper 1/3, right in the middle there. I have my block on the lowest setting. You could do it on the medium setting as well, or the high, but remember, we're going to be here for a while. So find your edge. I'm also going to pad my block with an extra pillow, just so it doesn't kind of dig in and I get a little bit of a broader surface. And then you just kind of want to lay back down. If you want to let the head hang off, you can get a really nice stretch to the front of your neck and all of these little accessory breathing muscles. And you're going to kind of let your shoulder blades open out, giving you a nice big opening in the chest. And then the hands just kind of fall to the side. If this is a little too much tension on your neck, or you don't like your head being upside down, you can place another block or pillow underneath your head or a bolster. The main idea is the action of chest opening. So I'll start my timer here and this one mostly in silence, getting into the deep big muscles of the chest that in the winter time it's so easy to curl up and tense these muscles of the chest up in order to keep ourselves warm or stay cozy or cuddle our cats or blankets or partners. We like to protect our hearts and our organs, but in this posture we're very aware of our surroundings. We're in our home, And we know we can be in this posture and be relaxed. Noticing the breath. Is the breath getting stuck anywhere? Honoring the breath, flowing nice and smooth. Temperature of your body. I went to close aerobics before this, so my body's still nice and warm from that. And this is our halfway point. Another option is you can also place, your lower back is feeling a little tense. You can place your feet flat on the mat by bending your knees. Might take a little bit off the lower back. You really want to isolate this stretch to the chest. Without moving just yet, begin to notice your breathing and picture your way out of this pose. But do it over the next 5 or 6 breaths. Maybe one breath you're bringing your feet back to the mat, bending the knees. Maybe you're slowly lifting your head, using your hands for support. Maybe you're rolling right off to the side and removing the block from underneath you. And giving your spine that nice flat back release onto the mat. Taking the knees in, Give them a hug. Massaging the spine. Ooh, that was big. We had 2 big spine extensions in a row, so acknowledging that. Maybe doing a forward fold. Greta will take us through.
Cool. And now we're going to shift our attention back to the hips. And if you're feeling it, that was, for me, that supported fish was a lot. It was pretty active. And that is so much of what we're doing in yoga, is engaging with our bodies and our nervous systems. And especially if you're activated in a pose like that, coming back to a moment, like if you just need like a hero's pose to reacclimate, that is a really awesome practice. Going from those moments of heightened experience in the body and then coming down to calm really builds, strengthens the parasympathetic nervous system. And we'll shift our attention to half pigeon. So for half pigeon, we're just going to come in the classic way. Come onto all fours if you're not already there. Tuck under the back toes and press back into downward facing dog, sending your hips high, the heels low. We're not here to practice a vinyasa class, but you're welcome to paddle out the dog. And then inhale, lift the right leg up high, 3-legged dog. And then exhale, come into half pigeon, bringing right knee behind right wrist, untucking the toes, flattening the top of your back foot, and really giving yourself the opportunity before you lower to set up your hips and feel if you need some support under the right glutes, or if you want to add a pillow for where you're going to press your chest down, utilizing any books or records or anything that you want to support the glute. And then coming down. And I kept thinking about, in supported fish, there's that, I know Emily loves this quote, there's that Bruce Lee quote, and I think I finally got it now. It's, in times of duress, we do not rise to our expectations, but we fall back onto our level of training. It's something like that. And I feel like yoga is one of those practicing grounds where we are kind of training ourselves to be more calm and mindful in how we interface in our own relationship with the rest of the world. So giving yourself some credit for showing up and doing a practice like this, that's especially in such deep relationship with reflection and listening. And particularly in the hips, giving yourself the space to explore and be present. And if something does come up, knowing that you are more than capable of being with that experience, but also knowing that it doesn't necessarily get to be the protagonist. Like, it doesn't get to be the dominant center, but it is a part of the cast. So it's, maybe it works on lights or something. So incorporating that into your experience. I don't know if that metaphor made sense. Hopefully I'm just trying to acknowledge that it's not just physical sensation in the hips. Sometimes there is an emotional release as well. Ooh, and I forgot to mention, this is the ball and socket class. And so if you would like to get into the shoulders here, you are welcome to, with the left hand, thread the left hand through the window you could create with your right arm in the floor, bringing the left cheek to the mat. And this is the halfway point. And this is the final minute. And we are approaching the end here. So choosing how you'd like to exit, unthreading the arm if you chose to thread, walking the hands back towards the pelvis. And in the sequence, I have this going straight into deer, but I really need a release. So we're gonna do press back into downward facing dog, three-legged dog, release that right leg up high, and enjoy the release. Everybody except myself is muted, so you can take any sighs or groans that may feel nice after a long hold in the hips, especially after we already got into the hip and shoelace. And then plant the right foot down, and we'll switch sides. So this time, inhale, left leg lifts. Exhale, half pigeon on the left. Of course, you're always welcome to take half pigeon on your back, more in a figure four position, especially if you're feeling any tenderness in the ankle or the knee. And giving yourself the time to set this up. On this side also, this side may be different. Being just as generous with your patience, channeling as much softness into your body as feels appropriate, feels reasonable. And then you're welcome to take the threaded needle version on this side as well. So this time with the left arm, you can create a window with the left arm on the floor, and with the right arm, bringing that in between that space and bringing the right cheek to the mat this time. And this is the halfway point. And with such close proximity to the floor, you may be able to feel the warmth coming up if your breath is hitting the ground, or even just the warmth from your body radiating, touching the ground and coming back up to you. And feeling connected to the earth, knowing that it's holding you. And also just using it as a tool to enhance your proprioception. What points of your body are touching it, and how do they change with each rise and fall of your breath and the belly or your lungs, or what's going on? How is everything kind of connected? And this is the final minute. And if you've threaded the needle, slowly begin to bring your chest and your arms back towards center. Press the palms into the ground. Walk your hands back towards your hips. Tuck under your back toe, engage the back leg, and send the left leg up high to three-legged dog. Taking any counter movement, any loops in the hip socket, and really feeling the ball and socket joint that is your hip, feeling the femur gliding around the articular cartilage, the synovial fluid. And plant the foot back down, come down to your knees. And we have enough time for a little bit of a twist, and then I want to leave time for a generous Shavasana. So coming to a seat if you're not already there, bringing the legs a little wider than hips width distance. And then from here, doing windshield wipers of the legs, alternating right to left, left to right, maybe thinking about the muscles involved in this action. And the next time the legs come to the right, let them come down all the way, coming into, and you may have to kind of scoot your hips back, but coming into deer pose or stag pose, creating perpendicular lines with your shins. And we'll twist. Inhale to find length in the spine, and exhale to twist, swivel the torso around towards the right, and slowly lower the chest down to the ground. And on your way down, I guess I'm going to reorient myself just so I'm facing the right way. On your way down, you may want to grab a pillow or some sort of support for the chest. We actually aren't going to be here for super long. This is more of just a spinal rinse. And walk the hands back towards your hips, unswivel your neck, unwind the chest, and bring the legs back up. can let them windshield wiper a couple times and then let them fall down towards the left, creating these perpendicular lines with your shins or 90-degree angles, but that's thereabouts. It may not be exactly 90 degrees. It doesn't have to be a prescriptive position. Inhale to find length in your spine, and then exhale, twist towards the left this time, twisting all the way around and lowering the chest down. And connecting to your breath. Feeling the expansion of your lungs. And then the contracting and release. The tilt of your ribs. And the breath is such a commonly talked about tool, but it never really gets old. Like even today, like on Instagram, I saw Channing Nicholas had like an eye that was like inhale. And I like, for a second, I like rolled my eyes. I'm like, oh, another one of those. But then I did it, and afterwards, like, I actually felt better. So it's a tool that may seem repetitive, but nevertheless, so effective. And then walking the hands back towards your hips, coming back to center, taking any last little wiggles you might need, and then arriving into stillness. And you can always take Shavasana on your back. You can take it on your belly. Maybe that's going to feel a little bit more safe and interesting for you today. You can take it on your side. I know people sometimes like take Shavasana on their side. Maybe you take it legs at the wall. I mean, you're home. You can really do anything that is going to feel grounding and restorative. We really are we just passed through a new moon, and I feel like I just talked about this in Yin, but time is just going by so quickly. The new moon is so much associated with all the qualities of Yin, so rest and reflection, and it can be associated with like planting new seeds or integrating those kind of new ideas and pulling them from the dream realm. There's a lot of things that can go on. I'm not going to talk on the new moon really because I want to just leave us to rest in Shavasana. But that's what I was trying to get at is rest. Use this time to rest. And I'll let you know when it's time to come up and out. And slowly begin to invite movement back into your body. And start really small. And let that small movement kind of ripple into the rest of your limbs, extremities. And gently bring the arms above you, stretching. Hug your knees in towards your chest. And you can choose if you want to roll over onto the right or the left side. The left side is more associated with yin and all these qualities that we've been talking about. Right is more active, more solar, using the bicep like a pillow. And I wanted to extend a wave of gratitude to each of you for being here and doing this practice with me and Veronica tonight. But also sending a wave of gratitude to yourself for carving out time to do a practice like this. Is so healing and such a restorative and healing practice, especially I feel like for our future selves. Like I feel like it's a really good way to look out for yourself. And honoring the lineage of this practice with mixed origins. Yin comes from more meridian theory and Chinese theory and Taoist theory, and yoga comes from India and its roots in things like the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and that long line of lineage of teachers. So honoring both those roots where we're pulling this practice from, and also honoring the land that we occupy. I'm on the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Salish, Duwamish, and recently, Melissa let me know I also live near Lake Washington, so Hachu, Apsh, those people, they live near Lake Washington, so honoring that very specifically. And then Veronica's in Brooklyn, so honoring the Canarsie, Lapade, and Rockaway people as well, and the traditions that went with Indigenous land and knowledge and wisdom, and honoring the people alive today, still honoring those things, and pressing yourself up to a seat. And we'll meet with hands at heart center, and this gesture is the Anjali Mudra gesture, which represents non-dualism. You can think of the yin and the yang symbol. You can think of a negative and a positive magnet, and that moment where they're just like, whoosh, they get pulled together. And then bringing hands from heart center to third eye, strengthening the connection between your heart and where intuition and clarity resides, the mind. And bowing forward to seal in your practice, honoring the whole self, both the luminous and the more shadowy aspects. Peace and thank you. Appreciate you all being here so much. Next week is our sciatica class, which, just to kind of translate, is going to be more of a gentle class. So we've got banana asana, we've got a really long sleeping baby, napping infant, that pose. And then also, I wanted to mention